travelers, and welcome to Go See, Do, Explore.
Here, we dive deep into the heart of travel, sharing hidden gems, unforgettable experiences, and the stories that make each destination unique.
Whether you're a seasoned traveler or dreaming of your next getaway, you're in the right place to get inspired.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashleigh.
And together, we'll set the course for your next great adventure and discover the stories that make each place unforgettable.
It's time to go, see, and do more. Let's explore. As you can imagine, one of the questions we are asked a lot is how in the world do you afford to travel so much? Well, we've got a lot of tips and tricks that we do to save money when we are away from home. So that is our topic for today. We've talked in the past about how I'm a teacher, so I get summers off. Chris works remote, so he can work from pretty much anywhere. So time isn't a factor for us. But obviously, long trips can get expensive. So here are some of the things we do that help us save money and still be able to see the world.
The first one that we have is to be flexible with your date and be flexible with your destination. It's pretty rare, especially for longer trips, that we ever decide we're going to this place on these dates before we look at prices. Maybe for a weekend we would do that if we just really want to go somewhere. But especially for longer trips, we usually have a couple of places in mind with sort of a range of dates in mind. And we do some combination of airfare searching, hotel searching, depending on the nature of where we want to go, to really zero in on the right place and the right time, the best value for our money.
Being a teacher, I have kind of certain times that I can travel, and unfortunately, those tend to be the more expensive times to travel. So one way that we look at it, we have these dates. Where can we go on these dates that will be less expensive than somewhere else? If you don't have those restrictions, you can be a lot more flexible and just be like, okay, I want to go somewhere warm in the winter. What's the cheapest flight I can get? And you'll have a lot more luck that way. If you are looking for a specific destination at a specific time, that's when it's going to be most expensive.
Yeah. And the next tip is to be patient and know when to buy. This is especially true of things like airfare that fluctuate. Airfare, train tickets, maybe, lodging certainly. But I say airfare in particular because airfare really fluctuates. Things like train tickets and lodging tend to start low and go high. Also, something like lodging, you almost always can cancel and rebook without a cost. So if it dips down, you can save some money. Don't just go buy plane tickets unless you go and they feel like an incredible value, or unless it's really important to lock in those tickets. Like I said, airfare does fluctuate a lot. And I think really the best thing you can do is just do some searching. We've talked about this on other episodes, so I'm not going to go into it in depth right now. But just do some searching and know what roughly you should expect to pay for that route, for those dates, based on previous years, based on what you see online. And then just be patient, kind of know your range, and just sort of watch and wait. And there are some helpful time frames. It depends on whether you're flying domestically, internationally. What do they say for international these days? Do you remember?
Last I heard, international was 3 to 6 months, and a domestic flight was 1 to 3 months, which for a lot of people, waiting that long to book a flight would really stress them out. But we have found that we can save a lot of money by not just impulse booking our flights. So this trip that we are currently on had several kind of legs to it. Another way to save money is to not just buy a round trip ticket. Mm-hmm. So we flew from New York to Paris, but we're from Michigan, so we had to get to New York. That New York flight, we watched it, and I'm like, that seems really high for New York. We watched it, and then finally okay, I think that's the time to buy it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of risk reward here. Obviously, you have to know, because it could have gone backwards on us and we could have had to pay more money. So, but we tend to know the trends. I mean, I watch flights like crazy, as we've talked about. So I usually have a good sense of the routes that we're likely to fly. I typically know what we should pay for them depending on the time of year and things like that. Of course, that helps. if you know that, but it might not be reasonable just to decide to become obsessed with airfare like I am. In any case, the point is that be patient, watch, and pull the trigger when you're comfortable. You might not get the rock bottom price, but you'll get a better price than if you just go and book the flights immediately, especially if, you're playing the airline credit card game, things like that. They're going to get you to pay more than if you're patient and methodical.
This wasn't in our notes here, but also don't be afraid of going outside of the typical legacy U.S. carriers. Yeah. We had a very good experience on North Atlantic, which does not have it doesn't have a bad reputation.
It's mixed for sure.
I mean, they're safe. They get you there. Right. But the onboard service has some mixed reviews, and honestly, we had a great time. It was a great flight.
We'll talk more about all our flights on like a trip.
Yeah. Episode. But I just kind of don't think, especially if you're going overseas, don't think you have to fly Delta or American or British Airways. Like, don't be afraid to look outside the box for airline. All right. So our next tip is about being open to different types of accommodations. Airbnb gets a kind of bad rap these days. Somebody will post on social media the like crazy cleaning that they've had to do or something before they leave their Airbnb, or there'll be some crazy fees. There was one hotel that we looked at that had like 12 different fees.
It had a wood fee.
€4 a day for a wood fee. What is that?
What is a wood fee?
But my point is, typically, if you are just two people, you have a lot of options for accommodations. When you get to be traveling as a larger group, hotels can add up really quickly. So I think vacation rentals are a great option, and just don't be scared off by the...
Just read the reviews.
Yes, definitely read the reviews. Really. And I feel like they're getting a little bit more upfront about the cleaning stuff. Like, I think you can read what you have to do before you leave, before you even book now. So don't write off Airbnb like some people have.
I think that Airbnb, I might be wrong about this, but I think that Airbnb does not permit hosts to ask you to do certain things. Now, that doesn't mean they won't do it. But like, for example, like putting sheets in the laundry and stuff like that, I don't think Airbnb permits their hosts to ask for that. Others like Vrbo or whatever do allow for that. But so, I mean, it's just something to watch out for.
I mean, I've seen Airbnbs that people post online that like they have to mop the floors and scrub the toilet.
I don't think they're supposed to do that.
We have never once experienced that.
No. But you could push back on that is what I'm saying.
If you do decide to stay in a hotel, don't be afraid to leave the comfort of your favorite chain, especially if you're going overseas.
Right. And just because you're getting out of your comfort zone brand-wise doesn't mean you're going to be uncomfortable. I mean, the beauty of the age we live in is you can look online and you can get a pretty good sense of what an experience is going to be like, and you can sort of do whatever mental preparation you need to do to be ready for that experience. We've had lots of great experiences in rentals and in others, kind of like where we can talk about this in a little bit, or we can talk about it now, but we're in kind of a non-traditional situation right now in Bologna, and it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. We're in a great location, and that's the thing you kind of miss out on if you have to stay in the Hyatt. You're going to be outside of town, not, with the fish market right outside your door.
Yeah.
Now, is that a pro or a con? We can have that conversation.
Yeah.
When you're choosing a hotel or an airline for that matter, make sure that you are reading the fine print and factoring in the fees. I mean, we did.
Wood fee.
Yeah. You don't want to pay the $3 or €3 a day wood fee, because I don't know what that means.
It probably does mean something.
So when we were planning this trip, looking on booking.com, before you hit that final book it, like submit or confirm or whatever button, it tells you all the extra fees that property is going to charge you. So just look at them.
Usually it does. I remember we railed on the resort fees when we talked about our California trip, and I don't think those were listed on booking.com.
No, that's true. That's true.
So, but I mean, usually, yes, definitely look, because oftentimes they are there.
The linen fee and the wood fee were very clear.
Yeah,
right
they were listed.
And when it comes to airlines, they say the same thing, although, we had an episode a few weeks ago about getting rid of junk fees or whatever. Just be aware that you might have to pay extra for a seat. You might have to pay extra for your carry-on bag or your checked bag. And you've got to kind of decide what's best for you in that situation.
Yeah, factor them and don't be afraid of them, right? Like we talked about on the airlines, just like look at the whole picture and don't feel like you're necessarily being nickeled and dimed. Like just look at what it costs, this one versus that one, when you factor everything, and then make. Another one that we've talked about on other episodes before too is that don't assume that you're going to need a rental car. In fact, think about skipping a rental car if you can. It depends on your destination, of course, but when you're in big cities, rental cars are a pain because you're not going to be able to get anywhere efficiently with them, and you have to usually pay to park them. So you're paying for something that's really not that useful. It's much better if you can look into options like public transit, look into options like rideshare, look into, we've been on this vacation we're on right now, we've been doing a lot of walking, which
it's a free way to get around.
Yeah. And it's not only to save money. I mean, it has saved us money, definitely, but also it's just, in many cases, in a lot of these cities we've been in, it's been the most convenient option. You can walk for 20 minutes or you can take some crazy bus route that maybe gets you there faster, but it's just not really worth it. And so just understand, the best way to get around a place. We had that as a topic on another episode. We can go back and reference. But there are times you do want a rental car and you just want to be very strategic about that. Get it for when you need it. Make sure you don't have it when you don't need it, if that's possible, because you're going to be paying for the car, paying for parking. And it's just a big waste and a hassle.
Another thing we do to save money is to kind of balance the expensive activities with some free and inexpensive activities.
It gets pretty self-explanatory, but one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure we mentioned this was because we don't want to give the impression that traveling is all about saving money. It's definitely not. You're using money that you've earned to get experiences, cultural knowledge. And so sometimes that costs money, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We've just found that we can kind of do more if we do something really expensive, but then maybe the next day we keep it under control so that we can make our vacations last a little longer that way. I also want to bring up, related to this seems to be maybe I'm right about this, maybe I'm wrong. To me, it seems like maybe an American idea that for an experience to be good, it has to cost a lot of money. That's definitely not true. We were just talking about the quote unquote free walking tours and how those don't really have a strong presence in the American market. And, in part because people assume that they must not be very good. It's just a different pricing model. It's not that they're not good at all. And the fact is, I know probably everyone listening to this has paid a lot of money for something that wasn't very good and has paid very little money for something that was very good, right? So that that's possible. And just don't make that assumption either. But yeah, in general, balancing the things that cost a lot with the things that cost a little, going to an expensive city, but then going to an inexpensive city, things like that, definitely consider.
If you're going to a big European city that's known for its art, you don't want to save money by not seeing the art.
That's not really saving money. That's just not doing it. Right? It's not the same. Yeah.
But you can take a break from those expensive museums and find a park to walk through.
Yeah. And a lot of times, the real cultural experiences are not the expensive experiences, too. If you find what locals are doing in a place, it's usually not the really expensive thing. So that can be really worthwhile.
We talked about, finding free walking tours, but another tip is just to look for free or inexpensive things to do in a place as well.
Here we are at the wine break. We're doing this a little bit differently today. We pull back the curtain. We don't actually have wine in front of us.
Well, we have lots of wine in front of us, but none of it's...
That's true. We're in a room with 12 bottles of wine. I know we sort of just alluded to it earlier. We didn't really say it, but we are in Bologna in Italy right now, recording from our hotel room, I guess. It's kind of a hotel.
Hotel, B&B, hostel. I'm not really sure what this is, and I think at this moment we might be the only people here.
Yeah, but it's nice. Anyway, we went on a food tour earlier. If you don't know, Bologna is this city in kind of north central Italy, and the province is called Emilia-Romagna. And I think we mentioned this on other episodes, definitely when we talked about the canned Lambrusco we had a couple episodes ago. This Emilia-Romagna and Bologna are real like food and wine destinations, really special Italian food here. Things you would know, like mortadella. It's all from here.
Parmesan regime.
Yeah, of course. And, prosciutto di Parma. And our guide today was like, we just call it ham. What? So the prosciutto just means pork or whatever. It's very funny. But we wanted to talk about one of the wines that we tried earlier today on our food tour, which is one that we had never heard of, called Pignoletto. And Pignoletto is a white wine. It is a grape, too. We'll talk about the grape in the region here in a second. But Pignoletto is a grape. It grows on the hills kind of around this area, around Bologna. And we had it in a sparkling format, or I think it was a frizzante is what they say, which is, it's usually like kind of half sparkling. It's not the full amount of gas that's in like a champagne or a prosecco, but it's, lightly sparkling. It's taxed differently for that reason. It was really good, really refreshing. What did you think about it?
It was surprising because I had never heard of it before. And, our guide just got it out and started pouring into the glasses. And I'm like, what is this? And it's delicious.
Yeah. I guess it can be made also still, but what we had today was that lightly sparkling. It was really delicious. I did some reading about it after our tour, and I learned that due to DNA profiling, they were able to figure out, this happens sometimes, DNA profiling, they figured out that it is the same grape as Gricetto, which is just it's a white grape. It's the same thing. This DNA profiling happened a number of years ago now between Primitivo in Italy and Zinfandel in California, which they thought Zinfandel was maybe an American wine. But anyway, this happens sometimes in the wine world, that thanks to DNA now we can see that, this is actually the same grape. So there was a concern, though, that other Gricetto producers in other regions would be able to start labeling their wine as Pignoletto. And so they established a protected geographical zone. And so Pignoletto can only be grown around here in the area of Bologna in Emilia-Romagna. The Italians, we've probably mentioned it before, the Italians love their wine laws. They're really into them. And they do it to protect traditions and things like that. But they're definitely, like, every tour we've been on, this has been a big discussion about all the rules that they have to follow and all that to call a thing a thing. That's been really fun. But yeah, Pignoletto, look for it. We're bringing some home. We have plenty of wine break material here with us right now.
All right, we're back to our main topic about saving money while traveling. One way you can save money and still be able to see attractions is by becoming a member of an organization. So a big one that we have used in the past is the North American Reciprocal Museum Program. So if there is an art museum in your hometown, if you become a certain level of member, that membership will get you into museums all across North America. So we used our membership from the Detroit Institute of Art to go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, or
Corning Museum of Glass.
Corning Museum of Glass. And so if you do enjoy museums and you enjoy supporting your local museum, this is a way that, that money can then save you money on your travels. Obviously, it's not cheap. If you're not going to visit your local museum multiple times or visit multiple museums throughout a year, this wouldn't be worth it for you. But if that is something you're interested in, it can save you a lot of money If you enjoy visiting botanical gardens, the American Horticultural Society also has a reciprocal program. We joined a local botanical garden and were able to visit the botanical gardens in Norfolk, Virginia. So that's if you enjoy the gardens and the flowers and that kind of stuff. That's another way that you can do that and save some money.
Yeah, that was a really fun one. We're not in it current, but it's one we do. Just every couple of years, we'll join a garden, and then you get to go to some other gardens. A lot of them are free anyway, but like there are some that are not. You can get into those, which is nice.
If you enjoy nature centers, there's a reciprocal nature center membership. And of course, if you're planning on visiting, I think the math works out to more than 2 national parks a year. The America the Beautiful National Park Pass can save you a lot of money on entrance fees.
Yeah, and keep in mind that's national parks, national forests. It's the interagency pass. So it works with whether it's administered by the Department of the Interior or by the Forestry Service. But it gets you into both.
If you are a veteran or a Gold Star family, volunteer at a national park, have a permanent disability, or have a 4th grader in your home, you can get the National Park Pass for free as well. Also, I believe once you hit 65, this is something that's not on our radar yet, but you can buy a lifetime membership to the national parks for very little money. It's much more than it used to be. Some people got very lucky and only paid $10.
Yeah,
for
did it go from 10 to 100?
I think so.
Like that. 100 is still a steal.
Yeah.
If you're 65 years old and can pay $100 to visit for the rest of your life, I feel like that's still a pretty good bar.
Yeah, and I believe that one even comes with discounts on camping and stuff like that. The
Right.
America the Beautiful.
So does the disability one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think probably the veteran.
Oh, right.
And maybe not the 4th grader one,
I
but
don't think the 4th grader one.
but yeah. So those are some ways to still be able to do things and really pay for something once and use it for an entire year.
Another tip we have is to plan your meals strategically. All this is really just kind of think through when you're going to eat and kind of how much you're going to eat, because it can be really easy when you're planning a vacation. I mean, everyone travels a little bit differently. We get very excited about food, so we're always like, go here and here and here. And when you think about it, it's like, okay, but that's actually way too much food. And so, like a lot of times we'll skip breakfast on vacations and just either we have leftovers or other times we'll have like a big breakfast and then skip lunch. There's not really like one specific tip in this. It's just kind of think about it. And then that'll keep you from overspending on food, for one, because food can be very expensive when you travel. It'll also, though, keep you from kind of going hungry and not knowing what to do.
And that's the worst when you're traveling.
How you end up at Panera or something. It's just like, I don't know what to do.
One way that we saved money when we were in Disney, which is a very expensive food destination.
Calling that saving money is hard, but yes.
Was splitting meals. So we would get
Right.
one thing for breakfast, one thing counter service for lunch, split that, and then have a big dinner. If you're staying at a rental or something that has a kitchen, you can cook breakfast, or you could, have stuff for sandwiches. That will save you a lot of money in the long run too.
Also, don't discount inexpensive food options. Kind of look around. Depending on where you go, you can get a lot of good food cheaply in a lot of places. We just went the other day to this kind of self-service lunch counter in Florence that was really good, and we were out of there with like each of us got like a bottled beverage, and we were out of there for less than 20 euros.
And it was just steps from the Duomo too.
Yeah.
Like it was in a very touristy area, but because you had to go upstairs and it said self-service, I think a lot of people straight away.
It was us and Italian businessmen.
Yeah, all the people there.
Yeah, but it was great. So look for that.
Or like street food can also save you a lot of money. That that kind of stuff. So our next tip is about packing light, and we just did a whole episode on traveling only with the carry-on. So you can kind of go back. I think it was just the last episode to hear more of the details on how we do that. But if we're flying budget airlines where you have to pay extra for a checked bag or a carry-on and we're going for a short period of time, sometimes we'll just take our backpack. That way you are paying the airline literally nothing for luggage, just your personal item, and that's it.
Yeah, for the most part, you need less than you think you do. I know liquids can be a struggle, but beyond that, there are ways of kind of making sure you have clothing that packs down lightly and can be maybe washed in a bathroom if necessary, things of that nature that can really enable you just to go farther and you're traveling, saving money and also like lugging that stuff around. I mean, it can be also just to think about cost. It can be the difference between being able to walk from the train station and having to take a taxi, right? Because your bag weighs 60 pounds. And so it really like weight with you when you travel can really cause a lot of issues.
We have backpacks that I did a lot of research before I bought them, and they fit the low cost air carriers personal item size perfectly. So you're able to fit as much stuff
Take
as
that
you can.
Frontier. Take that Frontier. And I shove it in there. Just like, you ready to size that bag? I'm like, went right in. There was only a little pop of something.
But so that's just a way to, kind of maximize the small amount of space that you have, is get a bag that is exactly the size that it's allowed to be.
Right.
And then, of course, wear your biggest clothing on the airplane.
Right.
Don't shove your big, heavy winter coat into your bag. Put it on your body while you get on the plane, and then shove it in the garbage bin.
Into your neighbor's seat. We should mention as a part of this tip, too, I know we didn't talk about it, but we've maybe mentioned it before. We have a small, lightweight digital luggage scale that we carry with us. And that can be helpful in this regard, too, when it comes to like making sure that you're staying under a certain weight.
Right. So you don't get those overweight baggage fees, because those are a killer.
Yeah. Next tip is to consider camping. This, of course, depends on your destination. There are some places where camping is just not what you're going to do, or maybe not the vacation you want. Like, that's fine. But we have found that camping as an overall strategy can work out really well. We've gotten very good at camping. And by camping here, I don't mean like, rustic backpacking kind of camping. I also don't mean glamping. I just mean sort of very simple, like state park, national park style camping with some comfort, with some, usually running water and showers if that's available. Not with a ton of stuff that we bring with us, but getting us close to destinations that we want to go for a fraction of the price. The one that I definitely want to mention, we've talked on this podcast before about how much we love Traverse City, Michigan, about how expensive it can be. There are a couple of state parks within a 20-minute drive of downtown Traverse City. We pay, $35 a night for, and can be very comfortable there. It can take showers, have running water, and we can do all the Traverse City things and spend $35 a night instead of $350 a night in the high season. And so just look at that as a part of your strategy. It's not going to work for every destination, but you don't need to necessarily assume that, because it's camping, it's going to be this rustic, like dirty campfire experience, right? Like it can just be an inexpensive place to stay, honestly. It's worked out really well for us.
Now, if you don't have camping gear, this is not a money-saving tip.
But you can borrow camping gear. I mean, you can, or join REI. If you have an REI, you can join REI. You can rent stuff from them if you're a member. Like,
ask on Nextdoor if anybody near you has camping gear that you could borrow.
I guarantee you one of your neighbors has camping gear they want to get rid of. Like, pretty much guaranteed, right?
Now, this next tip might sound counterintuitive, but one way that you can really save a lot of money and traveling is by taking a cruise. So you can, for more details on this, you can go back to our Cruising 101 episode. Most cruise lines are an kind of all-inclusive experience. You purchase your cruise, and that includes your food, your lodging, your transportation, your entertainment. Most of the time, it does not include alcohol, but there are packages you can purchase, and then you can see the world without having to spend a lot of money.
And we talked about the value that you can find in cruising. You just have to consider, of course, if that's the vacation you want, but it's worked out well for us on a number of occasions.
And you kind of have to be smart when you're looking for a cruise, because they can be outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
But there are deals to be had, especially if you're able to go on kind of a last minute basis. If you live in a place near a cruise port, you can save a lot of money booking 2 months out. And you can take that kind of dream cruise without spending a ton. If you live near Seattle, I don't know why you haven't been to Alaska yet.
Yeah. Our last tip is to set a budget and work within that budget. Stick to it on the agenda here, but I think that it's okay if the budget evolves. This is something that I always do. I'm a me much more than an Ashleigh thing. But we have kind of early on when we're planning a trip, we have a rough idea of what it's going to cost. We're not like just purchasing airline tickets without any understanding of how much the overall trip is going to cost. But then usually, I don't know, maybe depending on the size of the trip, a trip like we're taking right now, couple-week trip far away, I'd say probably about 3 months out, I start to really nail down what I think the trip is going to cost. And I have a whole system for this that is probably its own podcast that some will love and some will hate. But it essentially breaks down to kind of a per day, what do I think I'm going to spend that day? And it's not to be restrictive, but it's to understand. It's a guess. It's like an educated guess, right? And sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong, and that's okay. But I usually pad it pretty well. And then I understand what that trip is going to cost, kind of even sort of per week, per day. And I start setting money aside just directly into, like, we have a budget, like a household budget too. And I just start piling cash for that trip based on, what I think it's going to cost. And that's how we fund our trip. It also helps us see problems. Like when we talk about balancing expensive and inexpensive things, I know like this trip, for example, I was like, wow, this is going to cost a lot. What can we do about that? And like, so we were able to have conversations like, what can we do to reduce the cost of this trip in ways that don't necessarily reduce the value of the trip, right? You can make those decisions 3-4 months out when you kind of show up in a place without much of a plan. Like that's the most expensive trip. And so it gives me a lot of peace of mind to know about how much I'm going to spend in a day. And just to make sure that, like, most people, including us that take vacations, like we've worked very hard to be able to do this. And I'm fine spending money on a vacation, but I don't want to feel like I've wasted money on a vacation. Like I spent a lot of money. Like the example the other day, we just spent in Italy, we spent like €9 on 2 espresso. And I'm like, I have been robbed. I was so upset. And it's like €9 is not a lot of money, but it was just like, it should be, that should have been 3-4 euros. So, having like an understanding of what I think I'm going to spend, working through that budget on a daily basis and just making sure. And then usually the way I do it, which is really nice, almost always, we end up underspending what I've projected. And so like as the trip goes, you kind of get excited because there's more money available to do things. You'll be able to push the envelope on your travel a little bit more if you have a really good sense of what it's going to cost, so that you don't have the anxiety of like, ooh, in the end, how much is this going to cost me? This is not like an anti-credit card podcast per se, but we really we don't borrow money to travel. We don't do that. And so it's one of the ways that we travel is that we don't pay interest on this trip, right? We don't pay for it later. And so having that kind of budget is really helpful for us. We do more things that way.
So those are some tips to help you still get out there and travel and see the world, but without having to spend every last penny in your bank account. Hopefully it was helpful. A destination that has been on my mind a lot lately is a popular tourist destination, but I think it's one that is close to our hearts, and so we kind of wanted to talk about it, and that is Key West, Florida. I'm sure you've heard of it.
What?
Key West was the first stop on our honeymoon cruise, and we just fell in love with it right away. We enjoyed the short day that we had there so much that we actually ended up going back about a year later and spending a week in the Keys. So that time we didn't stay in Key West. We stayed in Marathon, which is about halfway down the Florida Keys. We were able to go up and see Key Largo, spend some time there, and then some time in Key West, but then also in the Marathon area, which is very kind of real Florida, old Florida vibe to it.
Can we say low key?
Low key in the Key.
Isla Morada. Yeah, that middle section.
But obviously Key West is probably the most well-known of the Florida Keys. And there was a place that Hemingway spent a lot of time. He has his house there where you can see the descendants of his cats. They're polydactyl. They have extra toes. And I don't know if you know this. We love cats. We enjoyed the Hemingway house. Near there's the Audubon house. There's the lighthouse on Key West.
Truman's Little White House.
Oh, yeah, Truman's Little White House. There's a lot of history and a lot of sights to see on the island. It's more than just kind of the Duval Street party atmosphere that some people think of.
That's there, too, if you're into that, but we tend not to do that.
It's not really our thing. If you're looking for a beach destination, Key West is probably not that. It's more rocky.
No, they bring in the sand. There's one beach that they import sand.
We've talked before about El Mesón de Pepe, the Cuban restaurant.
Yeah.
And it holds a special place in our heart, and I would love to go back.
If you're a big fan of the James Bond film License to Kill, you can do a whole... Like, you could go to multiple places. That was filmed in the Keys and in Key West. Not a very good James Bond film, but you can go see some of, like, the house in some of these places. The food there is great, too. Like, I mean, it is definitely a tourist experience, to be clear. So it's not like you're getting some kind of authentic hidden food. It's there for you tourists, for us tourists, but it is good. It's really good food. The Cuban food and the mojitos and the Floppy Joe's bar, of course, which is a historical place that is also a tourist place, but it has some history.
The southernmost point is it's a monument of the southernmost point in the continental United States.
Right.
Key West is also the jumping off point to get to Dry Tortugas.
Oh, yeah. I really want to go to Dry Tortugas.
Yes, we haven't done it. You can either take a ferry or a plane from Key West to get there. And it's one of the least visited national parks. And most people visit for the day. So staying overnight is a way to kind of have this little island all to yourself.
Yeah, it's Fort Jefferson there, which is this retired military fort that was used for a number of things, but maybe most notably it was used as a prison during the Civil War. The Confederacy never seized that part of Florida, so it was like a Union prison. If you want to go to Key West, there is a little airport there. You can fly there. It's also really easy to fly to Miami or Fort Lauderdale and rent a car. It's a couple-hour drive, and it's a beautiful drive.
And then you can see, you were talking about the tourist food places on Key West. When we were staying in Marathon, it felt real local.
Lots of great seafood, as you would expect. So we stayed there the second time. We ended up going to like local seafood stores or whatever and buying fish and shrimp and stuff like that. Good.
Yeah, so that's a little overview of one of our favorite places in Florida for sure.
Yeah.
If not in the United States.
That's all for today's episode of Go, See, Do, Explore. Thank you for joining us and sharing in the wonder of travel.
Keep the spirit of today's adventure alive by checking out our blog at goseedoexplore.com for even more travel inspiration.
Don't forget to rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps fellow travelers find us and join our community.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep traveling by any means necessary.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashleigh, bidding you farewell and happy exploring.